Well, Moody's has been in town, and Moody's has made a decision on South Africa's credit rating. That decision will only be made public, if at all, on Friday night. I say if at all because they didn't make a pronouncement the last time they were due to make a pronouncement, simply because their decision, the ratings decision that Moody's must make, is so absolutely pivotal for the future of the South African economy. I mean, it's quite a scary thing as we sit teetering on a precipice, load shedding stage 4 in the last couple of weeks, job shedding happening across the mining sector, uncertain economic times, growth prospects being cut as we lose. I was told this figure last week: for every stage of load shedding, we lose a very significant proportion of GDP growth. I mean, it is potentially devastating.
At the moment, growth is in this country. I mean, every single time the Reserve Bank or the government puts out a growth figure at the start of a year, you can pretty much assume it's going to be 50% lower at the end of the year. You know what I mean? And we started this year basically at about 1.8, and right now I think it's already below 1% because of load shedding and other factors. We had the World Bank and IMF come out and say it's going to be 1.3 before load shedding, and load shedding is supposed to cut another 0.3 off that. So I mean, if they don't and they keep on giving us these kind of leeway, thank God. But I mean, it's amazing the generosity, quite frankly.
They've been very generous. I mean, it's almost as if I've described it previously as the parent you see shouting at their child in a restaurant, going, "I'm going to count to 3." And the parent counts to 3 and says, "Okay, last chance. I'm going to count to 3, and if you don't eat your peas this time, I'm going to get really, okay, 3." And Moody's is a bit like that really annoyed parent sitting in the restaurant, embarrassing themselves publicly at the expense of a brat who just won't cooperate, and we're the brat.
I think maybe the reason they're waiting is the election. So it could be that their view is that we need to be on a negative downgrade with regard to the forward-looking statement, the trajectory being negative. So I think we could see that. But it's possible what they're taking the view is that the election will go well, there'll be a market-friendly outcome, the EFF won't do too well, etc., and then there'll be a bit of a confidence boost, okay? And as we know, confidence is the best form of stimulus. We might then see a little bit of business investment, a bit of credit extension, a bit of consumer vigor, at which point growth starts to pick up, tax revenues start to pick up, and there is a positive scenario.
That becomes a virtuous circle, provided, of course, you can take a 3-pin plug, stick it into a wall, flick a switch, and the lights come on.
Yes.
Which is our biggest potential threat. Not only do we have a bankrupt power utility, but we've got a bankrupt, incompetent power utility.
Look, the line to Korabasa going down was storm-related. That appears now to be back up, more or less, in part. The diesel has arrived at the gas turbines. So
which
again,
simply increases Eskom's debt.
Which is unspeakable, really, because they're running those things at incredibly high marginal cost. But as long as the lights stay on, even if they're staying on by, some trickery, I think the scope for a positive rebound is there. And I think it's relevant, and I'm glad we're ending with this, because the whole of our consumer economy and anything consumer-facing from a share price point of view is done super badly. But it is poised for recovery.
No, but here's the point to end on, because things, South African consumer shares, whether they be banks, which are still delivering remarkable returns on equity. I mean, I was just looking at the returns on equity of the banks. Capitec at 27%, First Rand at 22%, Standard Bank, Nedbank, Absa and Investec bringing up the rear, but still very historically massively profitable South African businesses, as something like Standard Bank cuts 91 branches, 1,200 jobs. The rest of the banking sector will follow suit. We need some growth in this economy, because big companies are cutting jobs in a real economy which is stuttering and staggering.
But the wheel could turn. I'm trying to be Mr. Positive here.
No, absolutely. And
the retailers, for example, really battling, and we're seeing them trade at multiples that they haven't seen in years. But it can turn quickly. Sentiment turns, and that's why I think the best thing to do from an investment point of view is to try and keep calm. Hopefully we get past this Moody's thing. Hopefully the election goes well and the citizens vote with their heads and not their hearts. And then we'll see where we are.
Yeah, and not their tempers, which is also the big risk. But Governor, can you be optimistic? You're not a perma bull on the South African market environment,
no,
are you?
I'm not. And the idea is, why do you want to be permanent? Why do you need to be permanently optimistic when there's other places in the world?
Can you be optimistic even for a little bit?
And the argument would be like, let's just say South Africa was a good economy. Forget the greatest economy, a good economy. If you had a good share on the JSE, like one of the top, say, 40 shares, you wouldn't put all your money into that. And South Africa is barely like 1% of the global financial system. And why are you putting all your money into that when the S&P 500 has done 40+% over the last couple of years?
But that's the point. S&P 500 has done 40+%. Maybe it's a time for a slowdown there and a pickup here. He's laughing at me, Paul. Help me. I need support.
No, I
Throw
think
me a line.
Viv's broader point is that most South African investors, both retail and institutional, have been heading offshore and doing well out of it. And most South Africans are too heavily invested here in their jobs and their properties and their motor vehicles and their businesses and everything else. So with your disposable income, it does make sense to go offshore. But if you've got a residual portfolio of JSE shares, I would not be selling them now. I know some people say, look, just cut and run.
Cut loose and run.
But I still think at the moment you're selling into weakness, you're selling into the bottom. It's much better to be being patient. And
Can you
calm.
at least concur with that, Viv Governor?
No capital gains.
Not
at least.
really.
This capital gains issue. Look, the fact of the matter is the South African market is going to feed off the South African economy to a certain extent, okay? And right now, economic growth prospects are weak, and I don't see how they're going to turn around. And we've had the confidence boost with Ramaphosa. We had it. Okay, it didn't last that long because the reality eventually settled in. And also, people talk about a positive election outcome. Describe what a positive election outcome is to me. What is it? Is it an ANC majority? Is it a DA?
I suppose it's bumble along rather than radical change.
Yeah.
Because radical change poses big risk.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Basically, you're going to say having the ANC at about 50-something%, having the EFF quite small, having the DA kind of stay where they are. I mean, how does that change the perspective? And somebody mentioned to me, quite frankly, think about this. The highest election total by any president in all of South African history was who? Thabo Mbeki.
Thabo Mbeki, yes.
Right. He got a higher election percentage than Nelson Mandela.
Yes, he
okay,
did.
and he still got kicked out. What would the percentage that Ramaphosa has to get to be secured his job at the ANC?
That is the gloomiest way to end. Paul Theron, any riposte? Or do we
No, well, I
discuss
mean,
the
Mbeki
terrorists
got
now?
ousted right at the end,
He
and that's
did.
a flaw in the ANC's constitution where they voted
And
for
it was a
president
flaw in
before.
electoral strategy by Thabo
I
Mbeki.
don't
He should
think
never have put himself
Ramaphosa is
forward,
going
blah, blah, blah.
anywhere. I think he will be the president, but I'd like to see him have a reduced majority and be forced to do alliances to the right, meaning to the center, meaning towards the DA. If that happens, that's a positive market outcome.
There we go. Get back to some growth, get back to some job creation, get back to some stability. That's a better way to end. I'm stopping before Viv Governor says anything else. Viv Governor from Ransus, thank you very much. Paul Theron from Vestac, thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching Taking Stock at the end of the first quarter of 2019. I still can't believe it's happened so fast. Good night.